Hello, Marcus. Welcome back.
Hello.
Episode number 2. Guess how many hits our first one got? Not many. I think maybe a couple people's parents watched it, and that was about it. So this one is called the Predecessor Paradox. It's effectively, we're going to talk about when you take over a new job or a new product and you step into something that's a mess. We've got 5 different axes with 10 different points that it could be, and we'll talk about a few of them and figure out how to get out of that situation. But when I was thinking about the predecessor paradox, these problems that you step into, sometimes we're the predecessor. Sometimes we are our own predecessor. Now, I was thinking about that. When's the last time you did a project? You look back at it, you're like, oh man, that was terrible, right? You've done that before? And that's
Yeah,
good
yeah,
because you learn. All that means is that you're learning. And
true.
I even thought more about that. And there's this old saying that if you're a conservative when you're young, you have no heart. But if you're a liberal when you're old, you have no brain. And now you got me thinking further. When I was in high school, a long time ago, there was this guy who wrote in the yearbook, I pitied the man with no shoes until I met the man with no beer. And at the time, I was like, oh, uh, that's kind of like, if you think about somebody who knows shoes, that's actually pretty sad. And no beer, it's just this white privileged guy, right? So it didn't land. So I would hope that this gentleman grew up in his white privileged self, and he's now would reflect back on that and think that he did that in error. That's what I was thinking.
Explain it to me, explain it to me. Laugh about the insanity of technology. Explain it to me, explain it to me.
But all right. Have you seen any technology news lately that you like?
So something I came across that Microsoft announced this week. Maybe you saw it. The this new feature that they're throwing out to Windows 11, specifically for the I can't remember. It's for like Compact Plus or some specific kind of PC that they're trialing this on. But it's called Recall. And
Okay.
so what it does is it takes snapshots of your screen
Okay.
of what
Right.
you're doing
Yeah.
constantly, and so that you can go back and review these things. And it says, it's going to use AI to lay out a timeline for you so that it can make sense of all of this data that it's scraping from your screen. And of course, Microsoft is saying, "Oh, it's very safe. It's all very secured, and it's going to be stored locally on your
Mm,
hard drive and encrypted and whatnot." And I'm like, I guess I can imagine a scenario where you could create a secure tool like that, but there's just so many ways you could abuse it, and that's my
right.
concern.
Well, I think everybody would be uncomfortable if the public could see your browsing history. Like that's the old
Yeah,
saying, right? And now
right.
you're literally talking about all the screenshots recording your screen. That is a little crazy. And then of course it'll get hacked even locally and encrypted. And
Absolutely,
they always
absolutely.
promise. Remember 23andMe? They just got hacked. So everybody who did that, their DNA information is. You know who's going to want to buy that? The health insurance companies, because then they could jack up the rates of individuals that.
Yeah. And Sony is actually dealing with the fallout of a previous breach right now, because I know that there's some games that are coming out on PC, and they're um, coming out with a requirement for a PlayStation Network account.
Okay.
And aside from the fact that there's a lot of countries where you cannot get to PlayStation Network, and so right there that leaves them off the list of people that can actually buy this game. Um, but then you also have a lot of people who are very rightfully calling out PlayStation Network for that massive data breach that they had several years back.
Yeah.
And they don't have like the best track record, but
Mhm.
they're like, trust us, we got
Trust.
it all figured out this time.
Right. Exactly. Data breaches. Totally different topic. Do you hear about the Scarlett Johansson AI
Yes.
assistant?
Yes.
And the fact that Altman apparently tried to contact her multiple times and she
What are you
declined and
doing,
they
man?
still doing it. Well, you know what? Next time we record this, maybe my lips will be moving and you're going to hear Scarlett Johansson's voice. Just kidding, Scarlett Johansson. If you're one of the 25 people that watch this, I won't do that.
There was somebody that I watched for a while, and I don't know if they were using the Sky voice, but they were using some. It sounded just like Scarlett, and this was
Mm,
on a video where they talked about AI technology, but it was all narrated by essentially Scarlett Johansson,
Johansson, yeah.
and it's a pleasure to listen to. I can't lie, but yeah, I'm like,
But it's her
why on earth?
privacy, right? It's her
Yeah, no,
likeness.
absolutely,
Yeah, right.
absolutely. I just as kind of a fan of OpenAI, I've been messing around with GPT. It's great.
Hmm.
I mean, it's super cool for what it is. But why on earth you would you would go to all of these links to get her, and then when she says no, you're like, I'm just gonna do it anyway. Especially with Scarlett Johansson, who famously sued Disney.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's not smart.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll find a willing candidate to do that. But yeah, all right. Well, I'd like to jump into the presentation for today. So
yeah,
let's see here. As mentioned at the top, um, the predecessor paradox is a situation where you step into a role, a position, or a project, and it's a mess. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, probably a functionally infinite number of reasons why that could be. But I just want to focus on 10 of them that I kind of group in 5 different areas. You own the mess and you didn't create it. That's why it's a paradox. You get blamed. And that's the situation. I had ChatGPT, speaking of GPT, create an image for what this would look like. And there's this angry lady here with the angry coworkers behind it. But there is a point in time when it is your fault. You get so much time to get things turned around. That's why you're brought on board. And I remember working for a high end mountain bike company doing their e-commerce, and several months into it they're like, you can't blame your predecessor anymore. And I said, well, all these problems are from that particular person. But they're like, you've had it long. And I was like, well, that's kind of true. So there is kind of a clock that ticks when you take it over. Does that sound like something you've gone through before?
oh yeah, yeah. Something I've gone through, something I'm going through, something I've unfortunately done to others. I'm
Exactly.
afraid to
Yeah.
say.
Hmm. And also mentioned earlier, we do it to ourselves too. We sometimes
Yeah.
are the predecessor. Well, what do you do? Simple 4 steps. One is remove emotion. Your boss could be screaming at you like, what are you doing, dummy? Why aren't you fixing this? Why is this still broken? Why aren't we making money with this? And if you get involved in that emotion, it's just going to cloud your feelings. That's not good. Number two, and this is where we're going to talk about in a second, but the reason why it's not working is there's a deficiency or a debt that the product or project has. And what you need to do is evaluate that debt, prioritize it, and find a way to pay that off. And step 4 here is really, really important. You gotta scream from the rooftops when you're successful. You have to celebrate your wins because you're gonna get beat down pretty early, and you better pick yourself up when you win. So now let's talk about the axes of debt. Our axes of debt here are tech debt. Most people know about tech debt. That's a pretty popular one. Value debt. Your product doesn't produce the value that it should be, or your project or your software doesn't. Usability debt. It's too hard to use. Feasibility debt. Not possible for you or your team or your company to build this. And then finally, exposure debt. So these are on the left are the 5 different axes, and each one has 2 different bits of debt. Tech debt, defect debt. You have so many defects in your product that it's dissatisfying your customers. And not only that, defects are terrible because you can't get to the new features. Because if you're working on defects, that's what you're going to spend all your time doing. Security debt, we just talked about breaches, right? You got to make sure that there's a principle of adequate protection. This is an old 20-year-old thing that came from the government. Don't spend more money on protecting it than what it's worth. So there is a limit to what you should do in security, but you have to do that. If you don't, bad things can happen. Value debt is the features aren't there to solve the customer's problems. The whole reason why you have products is to solve problems. And if it's not solving their problems, you have a feature debt. Price debt, it's not priced competitively. Either there's a cheaper system out there that does the same thing for your customer, or God forbid, you've priced it bare minimum, but you're still not making there. Nobody's buying it, so now you have to cut costs and cut that price. That's never good. If we look at the usability debt, it could either be simplicity or effort. So simple means how much effort does it take to learn the product? Effort, how much time does it take to use? So both of those have to be low for a product to be successful. Skill debt, your team doesn't have the skills to pull off what you need. Resource, you don't have the people or the money to pull it off. Independence debt, this is a good one. We often rely on partners or things outside of our control to make something happen. The more you do that, the more dependencies you take on, the less independence you have, and you're giving control over. And then finally, legal debt. If you have some legal exposure, obviously that could ruin your day, if not your product. So those are the axes of debt. How are we going to evaluate these axes of debt? And came up with a pretty simple way to do this using a radar graph. I'm a big fan of radar graphs. And so you can plot all 10 points in a radar graph. The first thing we do is we got to set out our goals, because not all products and companies have the same goals. I'm going to guess that there are some companies out there that can roll with a lot of defects because they've got a lot of money and they're trying to go as fast as possible, and they're fine. So that's fine. Again, we talked about principle of adequate security. So how strong do you need your security to be? So you give a 0 to 10 rating for each one of these. Here are some examples of goals on a radar graph. So on the left, it's just balance. It's 8 all around the board. If you didn't have any goals, I would just start there. Just you put 8 on all of them. But then if you think about a banking app, you got to have really strong security. You need to be very legally compliant and very few defects. But when it comes to pricing, that's a fairly elastic world in banking, and they're going to charge you whatever they want to charge you. Training, if it requires training, that's fine. Low effort, not a problem. So a banking app is more about security, defects, and compliance, and less about user friendly. Where consumer software, on the other hand, is a lot more about usability, onboarding, minimal training, and 23andMe, apparently their goal of security was a little light. So that could be a decision that's made by a company to have less security as a goal. All right, so now we've mapped out our goals.
Are you looking at these from like the viewpoint of the business owner, employee, like who is it that is looking at this graph and saying, okay, now I know what kind of decision I need to make?
Yep. So again, you stepped into a new role or a product or something, and you're getting yelled at. This isn't working. And so what you have to do first is understand what your goals of that product are. So whatever actor fits that mold would be the one filling this out. And then we flip it around and we do our product scorecard. Okay. Rate the quality of your software based on the number of defects in queue. And then you go through all these and you give a reality check. Where are you actually at? So you have your goals and you identify what reality is. I made an example here, Splane Pro. Here on the Splane Show, we're going to make Splane Pro. So we're doing pretty good on our defects. You and I are old software engineers. we have got some techniques. Obviously, defects are usually systemic. It's usually not a quality of a software engineer, and we're doing pretty good there. So we got strong security. We believe in that. Our feature
It's
effectiveness.
totally because of the lack of adequate requirements.
Yep, exactly. Or the requirements that were given to us that we didn't read. Feature effectiveness. How well is our product solving the problems? Well, Explain Pro, it's getting a little light there. It's in the yellow. It's not great, not bad. But look at price competitiveness. We are pricing ourselves out of the market with Explain Pro. And then number two, we don't have the correct skills on board. For whatever reason here at Explain Pro, we hired the wrong person to solve that problem. Oh, but we did give ourselves a 9 for legal compliance. So if we map that into our radar graph, looks pretty good, right? You do notice that big notch out of the bottom left. And then what we do is we map our goals over that. Anywhere the orange is inside the blue, that's what we have to worry about. And what you can do is just do a simple subtraction of your reality minus the goals, and this is what you get. So you can see the spikes on there. Now we know how to prioritize this problem. So, Marcus, you just took over Explain Pro. You did your analysis. You're like, Gary, you dummy. You got the wrong people on board here. We got to go hire the right people. And so, or we can upskill them. We might have the right people. They just don't have the right skills. Price debt. It's priced too high for the marketplace. So we have some options. We got to bring down that price. One way to do that, we still need to make a profit. We can try to reduce costs. Or if we actually have a little bit of margin, we can bring that margin down. And as mentioned earlier, we have feature debt. We need to actually add a few more features to solve our customers' problems. So, right, this is a nice, simple math, simple radar graph way to do this. You set goals, you analyze what the reality is that you're working with, and when you've stepped into these jobs before and you're being yelled at because it's not working, remove emotion, analyze the reality, and these 10 points will probably cover most companies, prioritize them, and then start to pay off those debts. So we need to climb out of debt. So I've got, and we're not going to go through all these, but if anybody's out there who wants to dive deeper in any of these, just ping me. I'm happy to share. We can go through each one of these and identify what we want to do to fix that. And our particular Explain Pro, we want to go down to our feature debt. So what we want to do there is talk with our customers and ask them what problems they're solving with our product. So Explain Pro is solving a problem, and we missed the mark a little bit. We didn't. It wasn't a terrible one. We gave ourselves a 6. So we just have to add a couple features or tweak a couple features to solve those problems. Another great question is if a product isn't solving a problem, ask how they are solving that problem without your product. And that gives you a little bit of intuition on what you should be adding. And then that'll help you analyze those gaps and make a plan to enhance those features. And our other problem was price debt. I kind of already covered that a couple slides ago. But if we have margin, you might need to shrink that margin. If you have zero margin on the product, you got to cut costs and reduce that price. It's the only thing you can do. And then we're going to slink on down here to our skill debt. We need to have the difficult conversations required to understand why the team members are struggling. As mentioned, we can upskill those team members, or worst case scenario, replace those team members. If we have a problem to solve for a customer and it's not getting solved because this team doesn't have those skill sets, you got to fix that.
That's where I get kind of lucky just because I'm in a large enough corporation that project comes along and I don't know how to fix it. I certainly know somebody who does.
That's
Or I
good.
know somebody who has the skills to be able to figure that out. And so then that ends up with these really cool little groups of engineers from all throughout the country or company and country uh, that can come together to solve a particular problem.
Yeah, that is
That,
nice.
not
Very
everybody
fortunate.
has that available, but it's a blessing that I have at least.
Absolutely. You know what? I work for a medium sized company, and one of the directors in product this week, we were talking about a problem that they were solving. So, images on the internet for hotels is notoriously bad. They have the wrong shot, they have pixelated images, wrong sizing. and they were trying to identify a system that could score the quality of the images by property. So right there's some techniques to do that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he felt as though that the engineers that he had working on it weren't going to be able to do it. So he just jumped in and started doing it. I got a little upset. I was like, "You're in product. You don't want to own that. You need to tell the engineers what to do." So we had a little bit of back and forth. But that would be an example of not having the right skills. In that particular instance, I would go to try to upskill those engineers if possible, and go to the school of YouTube. Right, I'm sure there's a million image quality routines out there on YouTube that you could watch.
YouTube is the new Stack Overflow, right?
No, Chat GPT is the new Stack
Chat
Overflow.
GPTs. Yes, yes, absolutely.
That's interesting. I don't think that Stack Overflow is going to be around much longer. These
No,
kind of doom and gloom crystal ball scenarios, but
yeah, I
it's,
don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because I can. But I actually did utilize GPT to get me started with some code a couple of weeks ago. I mean, and it morphed into something completely different by the end,
mhm.
but it was so nice being able to just tell it exactly what I needed it to do,
Yeah,
and it gave me a cool skeleton to work with.
yep. I did something similar this week. That's awesome. So, and I actually tried to challenge because the new Gemini came out, Gemini 1.5.
Oh, I haven't tried that yet.
And so I was like, I'm just gonna come up with an idea. So I said, create me a React framework that allows me to take in an image and have a game created out of it where people put different captions on it, and then the player chooses the best caption. And Gemini just missed the mark. So I went over to ChatGPT 4.40 Omni. It was
Yeah,
pretty damn close. Like
right.
it actually ran, and it built the client and the server side. So it was pretty cool.
Nice,
I
nice.
agree. Going
I
back to
I
your
like how
point,
it will also like once it writes something for you, it will give instructions
hmm
and examples of how to use it. I was like,
and
that's
reasoning
that's a
why
little
too.
yeah,
Yeah, but you said it best. It's not going to write perfect code, but getting that starter is a
yeah,
huge help. And then it's a matter of just kind of organizing right, finding the bugs, cleaning it up, making it more efficient. Yeah. And it's really strange. This is the dumbest it's ever going to be.
right.
I feel it right around the corner. I'd be like, create me a game where I could pass in an image, have people add captions, and I reward somebody with a point, and it's gonna do it. It's not that far away. Well, that is all I have for today on our little presentation. So, as mentioned, we just did a deep dive on a few of those. My thinking is maybe I'll put this together in a PDF and put it up somewhere. If anybody wants it, leave a comment down there, and see if we can if it's useful to me. I don't want to worry about it if it's not useful to anybody. So I was trying to think of what would be a good next topic. I've got some ideas swirling around in my head. So I am super annoyed in meetings and presentations when people say right exclamation point check mark exclamation point. Might do that as a topic.
How about buzzwords? We
Buzzword.
just went through a reorg again, another one, and which when there's a reorg, that just means you're about to get a week's worth of all hands meetings to discuss and meet your new team members and all of that jazz. But inevitably, someone will say synergy or yeah,
Buzzword
what was
bingo.
the
Here's what we need to do. We need to ask ChatGPT to create a buzzword bingo game where you can log in, and then during
exactly
that meeting, you'd have your own tiles. Let's do that. um, the other one I was thinking about talking about is building the airplane while you're flying it. Have you ever heard that statement? And a lot of kind of
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
entrepreneurial or smaller businesses, and I think people say it like, "Oh, you know what? We're just figuring it out as we're going. We're putting out the next step right in front of us." That's life. So I wanted to kind of unpack that saying and really like, I don't think that anybody's really got, has a solid plan, knows exactly how it's going to go. And So those were the couple ideas I had. So buzzwords. I like buzzwords. Maybe you should
Yeah,
have
no,
a segment at the
I
beginning of this. Like,
I like the I was thinking about that what you just said about the building the plane while you're flying it, because I feel
mhm.
like I both do that. I'm very much the kind of person where if there is particularly a coding project that I'm interested in and I want to do, I'm going to sit down and I am going to start writing code. And it may
Mhm.
be a mess. It may be a freaking disaster, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to test all these little things. I'm like, oh, can I do this with it? Can I do that with it? Blah, 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 blah. And then at the
Yeah.
end, I have a disaster, but then I can go back and I can plan out what the next one's going to be. And I can
Mhm.
say, oh, I know how to do this. And I know that that's possible. So now I can tie all these things together and have a coherent plan to go forward with.
That's
Just a
right.
thought.
Well, man, there's so many things in there I want to jump into. Engineer. So there's four product risks typically. Does it have value? Is it usable? Is it feasible and viable?
Mhm.
And engineers jump into the feasibility instantly. They go build it first.
Oh, yeah.
And there's another old saying is no software is good until version 3. Did you use Windows 2? No, you probably used Windows 3.1.
No, no. I came really close, but no, I started with 3.1.
So did everybody. Did you ever hear of Internet Explorer 2? No, you heard Internet Explorer 4. So, and the reason why is engineers figure out if it's feasible. And then they start to apply that thing to problems to get it the value. So it morphs and morphs and morphs and morphs. And then by version 3, typically, you have problem solving and feasibility come together. So that's usually why that happens. And then if you're
But
an engineer, you
right
don't
in
worry
an
about
ideal
usability.
world, I'm not involved with version 3. I'm on to version alpha of something else, right? And
It,
then there's a
it,
team that's working on version 3.
Nice. Hey man, that's a sweet spot to be in. If you get to just play and be curious, that's a really cool gig. Very good. Well, lots of possible topics for the future. Marcus, I appreciate. Episode 2's a wrap. Talk to you later.
Right on.
Bye.
Later.
Explain it to me.